here with the best in the game, the pride of Lettermen Row, the pride of Ohio, Spencer Holbrook, man. Spencer, we got a massive game, obviously, tomorrow. I'm sure you're well aware, which is why we're here in the National Title Hotel. I just want to start here. Give us the score prediction. Give the people what the final score is going to be tomorrow in Atlanta when it hits 0-0s, and we find out who's winning the national championship.
JD, it's interesting because these national championship games are not particularly close. When you look back at the history of them, we get a couple classics, we get them here and there. I thought that the Ohio State-Texas game was like the game where if Ohio State got through it, it was okay, I think they'll be okay against Notre Dame. I had 28-17 earlier in the week. The more I hear about this man coverage thing with Notre Dame, I start to creep a little higher. We've got 34-13 right, or 34-14 right now. But if Notre Dame comes out and controls the ball and limits Jeremiah Smith, then we could talk into a closer game. But I think right now, my head is at 34-14.
How much do you believe the man coverage stuff? Because we heard it at media days, and everybody had the same thing they were saying. It's man coverage from Al Golden to the DBs to Xavier. Everybody was saying we're going to play man coverage.
Yeah.
And I hear that, and I believe that in the moment. But the longer I sit with this, I'm like, man. So we're really going to play man against Emeka Egbuka, Jeremiah Smith. How surprised would you be if they rolled out there and it's man coverage for the first series, second series, we're in zone, we're mixing it up, we're getting exotic. Do you believe they're really just going to play man like that? I have a hard time believing it.
So I got an analogy. I know you love your analogies.
I love analogies,
you love
dude.
them.
Oh my gosh.
All right. You bring a lunch into the office. You got leftovers.
Sure.
It's your bread and butter. It's your staple, right? You play man coverage. It's what you do.
Yes.
Dance with the girl who brought you, bring the lunch you ate. But there's this place across the street that you hear good things, but somebody got food poisoning from it. And it's we can go there, but there's a risk there. Notre Dame doesn't run a lot of zone. You can play zone a little bit, but if you're trying to install exotic zone against Ohio State in 10 days, it's not going to end well. There's a risk there.
Yeah.
So if Notre Dame eats the lunch it brought, Ohio State is going to have a great day.
Yeah.
I think it's pick your poison, though, because if you try that new place that somebody's gotten food poisoning from, it's not going to end well for you. There's a chance that it could, but it might not. That's my analogy for you.
I love it. That's a great one, by the way.
If Notre Dame comes in and is hey, we're going to stick with what we do, man coverage, it's over. If Notre Dame tries to do some new things mean communication breakdowns. New things mean, hey, we might not all be on the same page on every single play, and on any given play, Jeremiah, Emeka, Carnell, they're going to make you pay. If they don't, Travion might, Quinshon might get loose. It is a real challenge for them. So I wonder if they're going to. I think they'll come out in the beginning and play that man and then try to get a speed for the game. If we can play man, we will. If we can't, we'll settle back into a little bit of zone. Texas and Michigan were all zone. Texas played 2 man coverage snaps last week. And it looked good. It worked. Michigan did not hardly played any man coverage, and it worked. Tennessee, Oregon, a lot of man.
And Jeremiah Smith seems to like man. I mean, we talking to him yesterday. One, that he was just a physical. I knew he was big, but standing next to him, I took a picture. I put up a picture of me interviewing him, and my mentions are all just JD looks like he is a teenager. JD has Burger King sized hands, and I'm not Jeremiah Smith size, but standing next to him, 6'3", 225, and you got to play man coverage against that. And he's already said, if they play man, in the Oregon game, he's we're taking shots, and he's talking about how Notre Dame's already said they're going to play man, and he seems to take some level of that personally, like the Michael Jordan meme, and I took that personally. So I wonder if it's a thing where Ohio State goes, or Notre Dame rather goes, we're going to play man until it works. To riff on your analogy, we're gonna eat the same lunch until we're actually this doesn't fill me up today. This isn't gonna be enough today. I gotta go with something else.
Yeah, it's the risk, man. And Chip Kelly's ready for it. Ryan Day's ready for it. I watched that Notre Dame USC game, and it was man, USC's getting away with a lot right now. And they had good athletic receivers against Notre Dame. Now they didn't win that game, obviously. Louisville too. Louisville got a little bit of chunk yardage on Notre Dame because Notre Dame, if you have a man coverage bust, this is not a USC or Louisville, though. This is a team that when you have a coverage bust against them, it's 6. It just is. And so, if the first series of the game you try to mix in your new zone or you bring a blitz, I think back to the 2022 Ohio State Notre Dame game, completely different teams, but Notre Dame controlled the pace of that game. It was a super tight game the entire way, and In the fourth quarter, Notre Dame brought a delayed safety blitz, and Ohio State knew that it was coming, and they ran a slot post over the top, and Xavier Johnson, of all people, catches a touchdown. And it's like Notre Dame played so sound, so well on every play. They got greedy on one play, and it was a touchdown. And, like, if you do that to this Ohio State team, if you get greedy on just one play, it's probably 6.
And that's the thing that makes me nervous about man coverage, because I'm like, you're not losing in man coverage to where it's like, oh man, that was like a 7-yard gain, and it might look like that a couple of times. But if you lose in man coverage against Jeremiah Smith, it's like, dang, now we're down 7, now we're down 14. And that's the thing with Notre Dame is, like, they are at their best when they have got you in arm's length. Where they are, the thing that I say is, like, Notre Dame has got to always be in a Riley Leonard run away on third down. Like, they don't want to live in 3rd and 7, down 14, you know?
Yeah, well, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I thought the Penn State game was interesting because it's 10-0 Penn State. Penn State looks like it's dominating. But I still thought that Notre Dame was, like, in that game at 10-0. If it was 14 or 17, you're like, okay, I think this thing is getting out of reach because Penn State can probably run the ball a little bit. Notre Dame kept them at that. Well, 10-0 with this Ohio State defense is like 21-0.
Yes.
Because this defense, as good as that Penn State group is, this defense is something different. As good as as the Georgia defense was against Notre Dame, like, this is different.
Yes.
And so, to switch it to the other side, like, if Ohio State does that against this Notre Dame defense and gets up a couple of scores, where are you finding points if you're Notre Dame? Because Ohio State, we heard Ryan Day this morning talk about special teams like they're ready for all the fakes, they're ready for all the tricks and gadgets and everything. This is a Marcus Freeman team who, Freeman's a disciple of Jim Tressel. You can tell that. He runs a lot of those special team stuff. He tries to steal points that way. If Ohio State's ready for that and the defense plays its B game, it's still going to be really difficult for Notre Dame to string together 2 straight possessions where they're just scoring touchdowns and getting back into a game. So, like, at a 2-score game, like, you're in danger zone already. And that's what I fear for Notre Dame is, like, you can come out and play your man, but know that that's going to affect your offense too because of what this Ohio State defense is.
And the other thing about that too is, like, the Penn State game, I'm with you. It was 10-0, and you're like, man, I don't like Notre Dame down 2 scores. And I picked them in that spot, and I'm like, okay, are they going to find a way to get back in? Imagine if they didn't get the ball to start the second half.
Yeah.
And then Penn State goes down and scores a 17-0. You're like, okay, now we're asking Riley Leonard, who I love, who's been phenomenal, found a way. Dude's an absolute. I mean, his SID yesterday called him your favorite player's favorite player. And I was like, with the run that he's been on, like, that's not I know it probably isn't resonating well with, the Ohio State faithful watching this show, but, like, that's kind of the run he's had. He's been so likable, but, like, hasn't had a game over 250 through the year. Like, they haven't been this super explosive offense when it comes to being able to quick strike and find their way back in. The thing that worries me is, like, I look at the quarterbacks that Ohio State's put into a blender, man. Like Dylan Gabriel, played a lot of college football, was a Heisman finalist. Quinn Ewers, for all that said about him, still played a lot of ball too. Like, still, I mean,
mentally
has a lot
smart
of tools.
too.
Mentally, like, you guys dialed it. Also, one of the best coordinators in the game, and Steve Sarkisian behind him. So, like, there's a lot there where I'm like, man, am I really thinking that Riley Leonard will do something that Quinn Ewers and Dylan Gabriel weren't able to do against this Ohio State defense?
Yeah, but, I mean, the counter to that, and I've said this to a lot of people throughout the last 10 days, is, like, this Notre Dame team, I don't know how they do it. It is a zombie. You think they're down 10-0 against Penn State, and you're like, well, Penn State's running the ball pretty well. I think that Penn State's going to win this game. And all of a sudden it's like, nope, the hand pops out of the cemetery grave, and it's like, Notre Dame's back. You think that with the left tackle going down in the preseason, like, oh, this team's dead. Nope, Notre Dame is a zombie.
Yes.
It's like you get them down 10-0. Riley Leonard is the leader of that entire pack, hunting everybody.
Yes.
He is a zombie, man. Like, he will get that first down when you're like, oh, you got him in 3rd and 6 at their own 28-yard line, and then he scrambles for 11, and it's like, oh my gosh. We can't get rid of this guy.
Yes.
And, like, that is the thing about Riley Leonard that I think is so interesting is, like, is he going to throw Notre Dame into a game? Absolutely not. He might throw him out of a game even.
Sure,
but,
sure.
Will Howard also might throw you out of a game. We saw it in the Michigan game.
Yeah.
But, like, Riley Leonard will his way back into a game.
And that's
it's hard to – that's why it's hard to pick. Like, I said 20 at the end of the show, but that's, like, garbage time. A couple touchdowns late maybe because, like, I don't think Riley Leonard is the kind of guy that can get blown out.
Yes.
Like, he just wills his team – for tough yardage, and then it's like, oh man, we had him in 4th and 8 at the 50, and somehow he scrambled for 9 even though we touched him in the backfield. It's like, how does this happen? But that's Riley Leonard, and that's what I love watching this Notre Dame team because of him.
And that's why I think Notre Dame covers. Like, I have Ohio State winning. I have them very, very narrowly covering. But, like, just what you said, the traits of this team and what they've done all year, just it doesn't make sense. Like that, they got rushed by 100 yards against Penn State and won that football game. And Georgia had, I'm sure, I don't know what the actual numbers were on it, but I would have to believe from a Stars perspective, probably won the talent side of that thing. Even with the backup quarterback, like you're probably favoring. I did favor Georgia's roster in that spot. And so there's so much about this team that doesn't make sense to where I'm like, Ohio State's the best roster in college football. We've all said that for a long time. But the traits of Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman, I'm just like, man, I can't in good faith see a world, and it could happen, but I can't see a world in good faith as we sit here right now ahead of the game where Ohio State just, goes and bludgeons them the way they bludgeoned to Tennessee or Oregon. Again, could happen, but I don't know if I see that happening. Last question for you here, brother. I appreciate all your time. Again, if you're not yet, dial into Lettermen Row. There's a ton of content over there. Spencer and the team crushing all the content, especially right now during National Title Weekend. Get locked in there, get a membership there. The traits of Notre Dame we talked about. The traits of Ohio State, I think, are really interesting, especially post-Michigan. It seemed like in that Texas spot, for me at least, I'd be curious of your take here, seeing them in a close game, I'm thinking like, okay, Michigan was kind of close in the fourth quarter. Oregon was kind of close in the fourth quarter. We saw them, from my estimation, maybe get a touch tight. I don't know if that's true or not. That wasn't the case against Texas. Went for the kill, finished it, all those things. Talk about the traits for this Ohio State team pre and post Michigan in your mind.
Well, it's 88 yards in the fourth. They hadn't moved the ball in the second half all game against Texas, and it's like, okay, like it's like what we call pucker time, right? Like it's time. Ohio State's getting ready to shell up here, and instead they get the ball back with 11 minutes to go, and they go 88 yards in 13 plays, and then it ends in a 1 yard screw you touchdown run, if I'm allowed to say
legit.
that. It's like a 1 yard, we are tougher than Texas, which is like what I think is the fastest, most physical team they've played all year. It's like, we're tougher than you, we're getting this yard, and it's a touchdown. When Texas gets down to the 1 yard line, we're tougher than you, and you're going to make a mistake and you're going to slip up. He calls that pitch play, whatever you think about the pitch play, it's like Ohio State snuffs it out because they're mentally tough. This team, I think, was mentally weak in the moment of the Michigan game. And I think that's a Michigan issue more than anything. I've never questioned the physical toughness of this Ohio State team. They beat teams up all year. I question the mental toughness of this team after the Michigan game. And just walking into the stadium against Tennessee, I thought they looked mentally tough in that game because they could have shelled up even in that spot. The Oregon game, it was a buzzsaw. You didn't have to worry about it. But the Texas game especially, the mental toughness of this team, which has been questioned so many times, including by myself. Again, on November 30th, I'm standing on the field this is a mentally weak team. And then to do the 88-yard dance against Texas, to come back down, Texas gets all the way to the 1 yard line, and to bow up and say, you will not get in the end zone. And not only that, it results in 7 points the other way. This Notre Dame is one of the most mentally tough teams I've ever seen because of what they've gone through with their injuries. But Ohio State, man, you cannot say enough about the ability for Ryan Day, the staff, the leaders of the team too. This is a team that's played so much football. They're so mentally tough. And when you tell them hey, go finish the job, it's they're mentally ready for that. And I think Notre Dame probably is too, but the 21 class and the 20 class that's still all together, the fourth and fifth year guys that Ohio State has, a tough group on the field, maybe even tougher in the locker room. And I think that is what that's what I'm starting to remember as we wind this thing down of this edition of Ohio State is the way that they responded is one of the more mentally tough things I think I've ever seen in college football.
And so much of that is Will Howard too. We've been going for, I would guess somewhere in the range of 15-ish, and Will Howard hasn't even gotten a mention, and it's the dude and the way that he has responded post-Oregon, responded post-Michigan, responded in this playoff, and I think this is a spot now where you're no longer, if anybody was questioning, you're no longer hiding Will Howard. Does he have to do his job? Of course, but he's going to be a part of this whole thing where they cut it loose and he's playing with that confidence. And I can't help but wonder a little bit, speaking of that post-Michigan whole thing, people experience tragedy, whatever it is, and there's a part of that where you grieve and it's hard and it's dark, but you come out the other side and you're like, hey, the worst thing's already happened. We lost Michigan. That's the worst thing that could have happened. In some ways, we've felt the worst we're ever going to feel. We're not scared of anything, and they've played like a team that's not scared of anything, and a big reason why I think you and I both have them winning on Monday night. Yeah,
I think it's more of they don't have wounds, they've got scars. So they were wounded on November 30th. The next day they had the players only meeting, and then Ryan Day was also invited. And it was everything's on the table. They talked it all out. We're gonna get. I think if they win this game, we're gonna get a lot more about that meeting. They're pretty coy about it right now, but I think after the game, if they win, they'll be willing to open up about it a little more, and I'm really excited to hear that if they do win, because I think there's a really good story to tell there. But for Will Howard, it's you weren't a part of all of these other losses.
Yeah.
So the one Michigan game that you did play in, you saw what it scarred, how it scarred all the other guys. And those wounds happened on that Saturday, but that Sunday they officially became scars. They're like, hey guys, Will Howard was one of the ones who said it. Caleb Downs said it, like, hey guys, we're still in the playoff.
Yeah.
Whether we won against Michigan or lost against Michigan, we're still in this playoff.
Mm-hmm.
So we might as well go win it because we have the best roster.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what the team told themselves. Like, we have the best roster. We messed up against Michigan. And now we might as well just win the whole thing because we're already in it.
Yeah.
So, like, that's what they're doing. And I think, like, that's, again, the mental toughness. Like, you just keep coming back to is, like, how physically tough this defensive line is and how good this offensive line has been through the playoff run and the weapons and everything. Like, the mental toughness is the thing that this team has kind of hung its hat on through this 3-game run and now into the Notre Dame game.
It's going to be awesome, dude. I cannot wait for it. Spencer Holbrook again of Lettermen Row. Ton of coverage over there. Lock in there on the YouTube channel, over on the website. Just get locked in with Lettermen Row. Get locked in with Spencer Holbrook. Best coverage in America when it comes to Ohio State. Spencer, appreciate you, brother. Be a good time. We appreciate y'all. Make sure you're subscribed. We're going to keep this party rolling. We'll see y'all next time.
Thanks, JD.